discussions were taking place.
With Ms. Harper,
With Gail, with...
No, your question was
Harper.
specifically with respect to Ms. Harper. I'm answering you with respect to Mrs. Harper.
Mr. Morgan, Newmark's Capital News. Does Mrs. Harper figure at all in the PPP civic component? Is she on the PPP? Is she on the civic set? Is she in the PPP?
Mrs. Harper is not a card-bearing member of the PPP. Mrs. Harper is not a card-bearing member of the PPP.
Is she from the civic component? Does she join the civic component?
She comes from
This
civic
noise
society.
is disturbing.
Okay.
She comes from civic society. Now, if you were to go back to 1992, at the time when the party first created the civic component, PPPC, most of the members who became members of the civic component of the PPP were persons working in society in different activities, social, economic, and professional endeavors, who were invited to form the civic component of the PPP. What we are doing now, and what we'll be doing for the next civic component, or the continuation of the civic component, will be no different from what we did in 1992 and all the other years that followed.
a few weeks ago, sir, the press had raised some questions about who may have been the prime ministerial candidate, and you had said that there was a long list of persons, of possible candidates. While you did not name anyone, names such as Robeson Ben, the current Minister of Foreign Affairs, were mentioned. Could you say what would have given...
Or mentioned by who?
The media and observers, and political observers. And they too were asked questions, including the Prime Minister, who said he was willing to serve again. So what I'm trying to get from you is what gave Mrs. Harper the edge to be the prime ministerial candidate, even above the sitting Prime Minister?
I do not recall making reference to a long list. Those are not my words. Nor do I recall making reference to any individual by name. That was, I think, and I'm convinced now, that that was the media that was promoting certain names. The media, or sections of the media, were seeking to promote certain names of their preference. It had nothing to do with the PPP.
Up to last week, sir, the Prime Minister was asked directly whether or not he considers himself eligible again, or whether he wants to run again. He said yes, once he's asked to run again, he will run again. So why wasn't he asked? And what gives Mrs. Harper the edge over the sitting Prime Minister?
Well, this party believes in reaching out. This party believes in reaching out. This party believes in change, what the French call changement. So I think the opposition has also ventured out on such a road. So if it's good for the opposition, I would assume that the PPP is not a party that is afraid of change, or is afraid of reaching out to persons in our country, Guyanese of distinction, who are prepared to serve in a governmental capacity.
What do you think gives her the edge over Mr. Hines, the current Prime Minister?
Well, I would think it's for the media. We see a lot of different things appearing in the media, and editorials and writings. They have been pontificating on the matter, expressing all kind of different postulations.
Would she be on the political campaign platform, sir? Because at the moment it seems as though, as my colleague said, she's being sheltered, protected. But can we expect her on the political campaign trail, speaking from political platforms? Because there are members of the civic component who haven't done that yet over the years. I can think of a few.
I take objection, to put it rather strongly and firmly, that the party is sheltering Mrs. Harper, we are not going with the pace of the media. We're going with the pace that we set as a political party vis-a-vis our own campaign. So when, as I said earlier, in response to Mr. Chabral, that Mrs. Harper will meet the press at a time when the situation so requires.
Mr. Rohi,
No, but hold on.
Oh, sorry.
So it doesn't mean to say because Mrs. Harper's candidature was made public on Saturday, that on Sunday and Monday, she will be ushered in to meet
Accepted.
the media corps.
Accepted. But you didn't
Thank
tell me
you.
if she's going to be on the political platform. That was the significant question. Will she be on the political platform campaigning alongside the rest of the party?
She will be.
Mr. Rohi, it does seem awkward that Mrs. Harper...
It does seem
awkward,
To
at
who?
least to me, that Mrs. Harper was sitting next to the president who was issuing a statement on behalf of her, and she was sitting right there. Your thoughts on that, sir?
my thoughts coincide with the ambience that was set for that occasion. That is, the General Secretary would read a statement alluding to the process leading up to her selection. The President and our presidential candidate would also read a statement in respect of Mrs. Harper's candidature as well.
Mr. Rohi, could you...
If it seemed awkward to anyone that she did not, I think most experienced journalists would readily accept that not all press conferences are called for question and answers. There are exceptions to the rules where press conferences could be called to make an announcement. Am I right, Mr. Harris?
It has been done, sir, yes.
Thank you.
Sir, just one question. Sir, could you guarantee that Mrs. Harper will not appear on state TV on personal interviews before she's made available to all of the media or the private media?
I cannot guarantee Mrs. Harper is the prime ministerial candidate if Mrs. Harper so desires. Because, I mean, on the one hand, you can't want her to be corralled, and on the other hand, not want her as a woman to make certain determinations on her own. So if Mrs. Harper decides that she, in her own right, wishes to make an interview with one individual or a group of individuals, you know, in one setting or the other, I mean, why not?
But as of now, she's not free to do those interviews.
Well, where does the word free is a rather
Because
relative.
you said, sir, that an arrangement would be
Free-
made when she would be
free-
able to interact with the media.
Free is a rather relative term.
Yes.
Sir, a follow-up to Ms. Moses' question. You said you didn't refer to a long list, but you didn't say...
I'm hearing some. I'm beginning to hear some disturbances
I think it's gone.
on the
All right, all right. Come, get on.
on the Western Front.
Mr. Roy, we beg for your protection, sir.
All right.
Kaicho News.
But Mr. Roy is hosting a press conference and we hear mumblings in the side.
Just as are we hearing mumblings in the room all the time.
Okay, let's
Mr.
get
Roy, we
on.
beg for your protection, sir.
Okay.
We're here for a
We've
press
had good
conference
press
hosted by
conferences
you.
so far.
I'm a sitting member of the whole press corps.
Just
All right.
one join in there.
Mr. Zulfikar Mustafa is here
come
to
on,
fulfill
Sabbath
those
News.
responsibilities.
Kaichur.
Yes, sir. Are you saying that Mrs. Harper didn't have much competition? And as follow-up to that, was the fact that Mrs. Harper is a woman a major factor in her being chosen for this slot?
No, I never said anything about competition. I said
Had
that
she any
I said, and I repeat and I maintain what I said on Saturday. She was the sole candidature that was submitted to the Central Committee.
CPP had no other choices? No consideration
She was
for
the
any-
sole nomination that went to the Central Committee.
Who made the nomination?
I did. I did on behalf of the executive committee.
And so what has become of the 6,000 Barbicians who signed that petition for Mr. Jack Dio? What the party?
No,
plans to do?
I didn't finish with that young lady.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, and you're saying that her being a woman was not a major contributing factor for...
My individual thoughts don't really matter. My thoughts are consumed in the thoughts of the members of the executive committee and the central committee.
Okay, sir, and how would you respond to, I mean, you spoke about ramblings in the opposition camp about Mrs. Harper. However,
Did I say ramblings?
well, things that they're saying.
No, you have to be careful, you know, because if I
But
see
sir,
something
can
in
you
print,
quote your entire statement to say
rumbling,
that, yeah?
panic.
no, it can't.
Panic. Panic was your word.
It can't be whatever.
All right.
All right.
Panic. Panic, sir. Panic in the opposition camp. Yes.
Is panic a word that is acceptable to you, sir?
That's the word I used.
Okay, sir, I will proceed. In an interview with Mr. Granger, he said that while Mrs. Harper is distinguished, he's not worried because she's not a vote-getter. How would you respond to his and other political analysts' thoughts that she wouldn't garner much votes for the people?
Let us wait on May the 11th and we will see.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, one question.
The Burbies.
Just not. All right.
The
you're on
Burbies,
board.
sir, on the Burbies petition
Mhm.
that would have been dealt with, I figure, by the party's executive committee. What was the decision to that and your response to the 6,000
The
Barbicians?
party took note of the petition and it was left at that.
It was dismissed, having chosen Mrs. Harper.
No, I didn't say dismissed. The party took note of it and it was left at that.
Meaning, left at that meaning what? It was
Well,
left-
you know, if you take note of somebody say something and and it is recorded as noted, that's it.
Sir, how would you respond to some of the comments I've seen coming out of the opposition benches that the decision by the PPP to go for Mrs. Harper is a reflection that there is rift in the ranks of the party?
Well, those persons probably are more informed than I am
Well, there might be,
as the
but
general secretary. But as far as I am personally concerned, there's no rift in the PPP in respect to the selection of Mrs. Harper's candidature.
Is the party
None whatsoever.
Let's get one person at a time, please. A hand.
Mr. Roy, what role the civic component played in putting forward Mrs. Harper?
What role did the
Civic component play in Mrs. Harper's selection?
civic component is a rather loose arrangement that is associated with the PPP and aligns with the PPP. The civic component does not have any structure as such, so that it is in that context that the decision was taken.
So they did not actually submit a name to you.
No, they didn't submit a name to us.
were they asked to submit any?
No, they weren't asked to submit any.
And sir, is the party concerned, because one of the things we saw over the weekend, even on the pages of government ministers, when the announcement was made of Mrs. Harper, is that a lot of folks did not know who she was. Does the party think it's a gamble? That
Who is this? Who didn't know?
a lot of folks, people on Facebook. And
No, I heard you
social
said something
media.
about government ministers.
It's on some government ministers' pages, Praymatic channels. So a lot of people under her statement were questioning who is this woman and why was she chosen over other people in the party. So I'm trying to get. She's not a popular person going forward. How does the party intend to deal with that?
Well, put it this way. In the genealogy of politics, not everyone has to be a popular person. The People's Progressive Party, if we look into its history, I mean, I don't know if Granger was a popular person when he became the leader for the PNC. How popular was he? How much was he known? How much was Harman known? Many of these people in the PNC are those people who are under Granger's tutelage now, including himself, was hardly known by anyone. They themselves had to promote him. And the APNU, as currently made up, the alliance, is a combination of old and old. So, I mean, the same is applicable to the APNU. All political parties, you know, in seeking and reaching out to members of the Guyanese society would seek to bring new people on board. I think the question here was that this was a surprise to many people. But it doesn't mean to say because it was a surprise that the candidate is not a credible one, because notwithstanding what some of the critics have said, they have all admitted that this lady has a professional and a distinguished career. She's happy, she's come with no baggage and all of that. Well, if you have, you let me know.
I made the wrong alarm.
All right, last
All right.
final question.
Sir, just a clarification from me. Is it safe to say the civic component of the PPP Civic was not consulted on this decision to make Mrs. Harper the Prime Ministerial candidate?
I just said what the civic component is.
Okay, no, but were they consulted at all? The Prime Minister keeps saying he's the head of the civic component. Mrs.
When-
Rodriguez said she's a member of the civic component. So I'm trying to find out if
My
they
friend,
consulted.
my friend, listen to me. Don't try to get me into these tricky situations with these trick questions. I have already said that the civic component is a rather loose configuration of individuals. There's no structure, there's no leader.
The Prime
the-
Minister was a civic member.
there
Was he
is no-
consulted?
This Prime Minister was what?
He says he's the leader of the civic component. So was he consulted?
My friend, I would wish to clarify. We do not have any leader of the civic component. We never had.
But could Mr. Rowe
Was
We
he
never had.
consulted then?
When we set up the civic component, right, and the Prime Minister, or Mr. Sam Hines, was chosen as the Prime Ministerial candidate, there were other members of the civic component then, but we never sat around a table and asked them to agree or disagree on whether Mr. Sam Hines should be the Prime Ministerial candidate. That never happened. The Prime Minister was involved. He was told. He was involved in the process. We did that.
Mr. Rowe, why would you describe the civic component as being that loose?
As what?
Being that loose or loose?
I didn't get that.
Loosely lit body.
Loose what?
Loosely lit.
Loosely lit?
It's a loose arrangement.
I never used that word,
He
knit,
said it's a loose
You
arrangement.
said it's a loose arrangement.
which is quite different from knit.
Okay, loose arrangement.
Uh-huh.
Why would you say so when, in an edition of the Thunder, the official organ of the party, it was stated there that the grouping met at least once a month under the chairmanship of Mr. Jeffrey? Isn't that some sort of organized body?
Mr. Henry Jeffrey was one of the proponents of that some organizational form should be given to the civic component. That was one of his areas of advocacy, that some organizational form should be given to the civic component. It was never agreed. It was never agreed. But I do recall him pushing for some organizational form to be given to the civic component.
Why did PP oppose that?
We never agreed to it.
Why?
And in fact, many people in the civic component at the time did not agree with that. Some people just don't want to be any organization. They don't like organizational structure because organizational structures impose upon them. They need to be disciplined. They need to be something like a political party.
Would the people threatened
And
by
not,
organized
no, sir. Many people were not comfortable with any organizational form being given to the civic component.
Two final questions. Stacey's one, and then Ms. Ratcliffe. Stacey, let us hear you.
Mr. Rowe, good afternoon. Stacey James here. The Water Run Commission of Inquiry is still ongoing. And has there been any investigations about the missing guns from the Army? Could we get a follow-up on that?
Well, the first thing that I would like to say is that I am pleased that the People's Progressive Party appeared before the Commission and laid our evidence in chief before the Commission. The second point I'd like to make is that I think that I'm convinced about the need for the commission of inquiry to summons Mr. Granger and Mr. Harman to appear before the commission. They must not be allowed to get away scot-free, precisely because of the fact that the party which Mr. Granger now heads, that party's name had been called ad nauseum within the commission's evidence taking. And since Mr. Granger is now at the head of the People's National Congress, the party whose name has been called so often, it seems to me, logically, that a summons, because the commission is free, the commission of inquiry is free to summon people. Mr. Granger and Mr. Harman ought to be summoned. I'm surprised to see that the media is not taking up this matter. And I hope that this is not a bias in favor of Mr. Harman and Mr. Granger. Why are they not pushing for Mr. Harman and Mr. Granger to appear before the commission? I'd like to appeal to the media to take up this matter.
Look, Jomo Yearwood came,
Let me finish.
and you ignored him.
Let me finish. Jomo Yearwood is not Harman and Granger. Jomo Yearwood is Jomo Yearwood. He claims that he's a dissident to the PNC.
And a friend of ours.
I am saying, gentlemen and ladies in the media, that the media should push for Mr. Harman and Mr. Granger to appear before the COI. And at the next press conference, hosted by the APNU or the Alliance, this question must be put to them. We must begin putting this matter out in the public domain. They should not be above scrutiny. They should not be above scrutiny. Now, insofar as the missing weapons is concerned, these are questions that must be asked at the COI. They must not be allowed to get off scot-free. They worked in the military. They know what went on in the military. We never did.
What's the Affairs Minister you can keep an open commission?
I am saying that this commission of inquiry has the legal authority, the legal remit to invite Mr. Harman and to summon Mr. Harman, Mr. Granger, to appear before the commission of inquiry to answer many questions associated with the demise of Dr. Rodney, as well as with respect to the weapons that have disappeared. In addition to that, it seems to me that a question must also be asked in relation to drug trafficking, that it is our understanding that the anti-money laundering bill, which floundered in the parliamentary process, floundered because huge sums of money was doled out by certain persons who are involved in drug trafficking to certain political parties. And this is something that we need to take up very aggressively. Investigative journalism. I see most people are closing their books. They don't want to write about this.
No, they might shy. Chief, we're trying to protect you.
Protect
one
me?
of the parties might throw you out. So let me keep.
What is that?
One of the parties who receive drug money might throw you out.
Show me out? Throw me out from where?
You said that you want us to rest and we're trying to protect you. I got begun on the thing to go through.
All right, let's.
No, hold on. Let me hear Mr. Harris.
Mr. Harris, we're going to talk about it after this.
Anyway, I'm saying that information is available and ought to be released at some point in time through investigative journalism, that the anti-money laundering bill was torpedoed as a result of huge sums of money being doled out to a certain political party to stymie the process.
Has that information been made available to the police?
No, well, I don't know as yet. I don't know. I think the best person to ask that is the Commissioner of Police. No, I can't answer for the police. There are certain things that go to the police that don't necessarily come to me.
All right.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Last final question.
Yes, final question with this AMP. Sir, you spoke about when Mrs. Harper's name appeared on Ruel Johnson's list.
When what?
Mrs. Harper's name appeared on Ruel Johnson's list.
Yes.
And you also said that Ruel is somehow close with the opposition parties. You also, in defending Mrs. Harper being a new face, you said that this is something that the APNU did and stuff. So is the PPP taking a cue from things in the opposition camp?
That's the last portion we want to take any cue from. Rather than taking a cue from them, we take an X and a Y and a W.
The opposition said that they're having an uphill task to get equal rights on the state media, access, on the state media. As
They having what?
On the state media.
What is
having an uphill task.
They're having an uphill task?
Yes.
Okay.
As the incumbent party, would you guys be pushing for some kind of equality to say, well, yes, we've given the opposition parties a fair chance and they have the airtime?
Well, I think they need to talk more about that to let us understand what they're talking about. How could they be talking about equal access and they cut the budget of the state media?
But we're talking about politics here, parties.
No. I'm saying they cut the budget of NCN, NTN, and all the NTNs and NTNs and so forth. And I'm saying that, they can't want their cake and eat it.
But
They have to have some consistency.
Say, well, yes, we want fair and square, we give them equal access.
What is that?
Would the PPP be pushing to say, well, we give them equal access? And
We are
yes,
not going to be
fair
pushing on
and square?
any agenda for the APN or the AFC.
Thank you, sir.
Are you saying
Thank you all very much, ladies and gentlemen.
they should be granted access?
No, I'm saying that they can't be having their cake and eat it. They can't want to cut this budget, which hurriedly strung together a press statement attacking the PPP civic choice for a prime ministerial candidate. As a matter of fact, it is clear that through an act of desperation, the APNU AFC appears shell-shocked due to the fact that our prime ministerial candidate is an outstanding but yet humble woman as against their power-hungry prime ministerial candidate. Further, we believe the APNU AFC actions are a direct result of the overwhelming and commendation Mrs. Harper and the PPPC have been receiving from Guyanese far and wide. Small wonder why the APNU AFC coalition responded with such a harsh and disparaging comments on social media to the announcement of Mrs. Harper's candidature in an effort to downplay its significance and the impact it will have in further depleting their fledgling chances at the upcoming elections. The opposition is trying desperately to create diversions from the series of high-profile resignations that hit the AFC. As the hemorrhaging continues over the formalization of its union with the PNC, as Guyanese far and wide are continuing to register displeasure, their displeasure, with the AFC's betrayal of those who fell for its promises of change. It also comes at a time when the AFC continues to be confronted with questions of improper financial practices, the misappropriation of millions of dollars in campaign donations, allegations of electoral rigging, and cronyism, all of which have been raised publicly by members and former members who, up until recently, held high-profile positions within the AFC. As the largest and most experienced political party in Guyana, the People's Progressive Party, and by extension the PPPC, has a strong, unblemished record, and therefore need not descend into desperation unlike the APNU, which continues to clutch at straws. The PPP remains strong and confident that come May 11, 2015, Guyanese will once again choose progress over promises and vote solidly for the PPP Civic. That's the first statement. The next statement reads as follows. The People's Progressive Party wishes to commend the thousands of Guyanese who conducted transactions at registration centers countrywide during the claims and objections period, even though the period for claims and objections ended on the 22nd of February. All are urged to make objections to persons on the PLE that are either dead or underage, so that a clean and accurate list can be prepared for the May 11th elections. This further serves to justify the PPP's position on its sustained representation of the large number of unregistered persons and persons needing transfers after the completion of the last cycle of continuous registration. Further, the party has noted with concern the continuous extension to GCOM's vacancy notice for polling day staff. The party urges qualified and competent persons desirous of safeguarding Guyana's democracy to apply so that suitably qualified persons are recruited to work on polling day. Further, the party over the last several months has made calls on GCOM to ensure that its recruitment process is done in a transparent manner and that competent persons are employed. The party reiterates its call for public vetting of persons employed or who has applied to be employed to work on elections day. Such an exercise will again justify the transparency of the process and enhance the confidence of the electorate in GCOM's ability to deliver a free and fair elections on May 11th. Guyanese must demand public knowledge of all polling day staff, since this should be no secret to the populace. GCOM must ensure that all polling places are checked and verified as quickly as possible, and residents are made aware of these locations. Again, the PPP is wary of GCOM's last-minute changes to the location of polling stations, which only add to the frustration of voters. GCOM had agreed to minimize changes, and so too that unavoidable change will be done in consultations with the political parties. Now that the stage has been set for May 11, GCOM must commence an aggressive voter education program, sensitizing voters of E-Day procedures and the rights of voters at polling places. Voters must be aware of what to expect from GCOM polling day staff. For instance, stamping of the ballot with the official stamps. One can recall the Herstellin fiasco in the 2011 elections, where 19 ballot papers were given to 19 individual voters without the presiding or assistant presiding officer stamping them. This rendered the ballots rejected, thus denying the democratic rights of 19 hard-working Guyanese. Further, the party is seriously concerned over the use of information clerks placed at polling places with more than one polling station. This is due to the bitter experience of the 2011 elections and the confusion and frustration created by these information clerks. Whether deliberate or not, the PPP is against the use of information clerks in the 2015 elections. The nation awaits GCOM responses on concerns raised by the PPP and civic society aimed towards the holding of free and fair elections. The final statement, ladies and gentlemen, is as follows. The People's Progressive Party is pleased to announce that several activities to celebrate the life and work of the founder leader and former President of Guyana, Dr. Cheddi Jagan, will take place in the month of March. It would be recalled that Dr. Cheddi Jagan and his wife, Janet, died in the month of March. Dr. Jagan died on March the 6th, 1997, while his wife, Janet, died on March 28, 2009. Among the several activities planned are the Babu John wreath laying and commemorative activity on March the 8th, which will be preceded by a cycle race from New Amsterdam to number 54 village on the quarantine. Thousands of party members, supporters and friends are expected to participate in this activity, which will be addressed by President Donald Ramotar, former President Bharat Jagdeo, and the PPP General Secretary Clement Rohi. Other activities planned are the annual Cheddi Jagan Lecture Series on March the 23rd at the Cheddi Jagan Research Center, the Cheddi Jagan Fitness Walk at the National Park on March the 15th, the annual Fun Day at State House also on March the 15th, a book and photographic exhibition at the National Library on March the 16th, a night of reflection on March the 13th, and wreath laying activities at Lethem and Karasabai in Region 9, Monkey Mountain, Koh Pinang, and K2 in Region 8. Lectures and video shows and other commemorative activities will take place in all the 10 geographic regions of Guyana. The celebrations and commemorative activities will be held under the theme, Cheddi Jagan, His Vision, Our Living Guide. The PPP takes this opportunity to extend an invitation to all Guyanese to participate in all the planned activities in honor of this great leader and statesman, whose dedication and commitment to the cause of a better Guyana is unmatched. He was truly a man of the people. The PPP also wishes to pay homage to Mrs. Janet Jagan, former President of Guyana, who also passed away in the month of March, and who also served this nation with dedication and distinction. A wreath laying activity at Babu John on March the 28th is one of the several activities planned by the party in her honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Very.
You mentioned you referred to your call for public vetting. Do you have, so you do transparency in the election process. Last week you mentioned that there were some operational issues because of that public vetting might be able to address. Can you say what exactly those operational issues were?
What is what?
Had a problem with? In 2011, you said there were operational problems, and that is why the party is calling for public vetting. Can you point to what those problems were exactly?
Operational problem? Well, as far as I could remember, the operational problems had to do with the whole question of, first of all, in the first instance, the recruitment procedures, whereby there was absolutely no public vetting. The political parties had no say in the selection of election day's officials. We are not seeking to lay down the guidelines by which these persons should be employed, but we again wish to stress that accountability and transparency cannot only be attached to government and government agencies and departments and public officials. Accountability and transparency has now become a universal phenomenon in the context of governance. And therefore, since GECOM is an institution of national importance, in a sense, holding the key to the successful realization of free and fair elections, the whole question of accountability and transparency, GECOM cannot be immune or insulated from that aspect of governance.
Dennis?
Mr. Leader, could you say, sir, why the party appears to be sheltering Mrs. Harper from the public and private media as questions about her candidacy and what are some of her plans and so on? Why is she being sheltered the party?
Well, that is your word. That is not our word. We would like to disassociate ourselves from any indication of that sort. It is not for us to engage in that kind of activity where any candidate for a party is concerned, especially at the level that we announced only last Saturday. The media will have the opportunity at the appropriate time to meet with our prime ministerial candidate to have a engagement with her.
Sir, quick follow-up. In any other corner of the world, someone comes out from relative obscurity into public life, is scrutinized and reported on to the limit. But you said your party was very critical of APNU AFC actually jumping at an attempt to put out a press release on Ms. Harper. Was this big thing about anybody attempting to report, to criticize, to attack Ms. Harper at this time that would make the party so upset?
First of all, we're not upset. That is your word.
All right. You said that...
We are not upset, that's number one. So that word is not in our lexicon, our political lexicon, insofar as this matter is concerned. Secondly, when you talk about scrutiny, I think that scrutinization of Mrs. Harper has already begun. If you were to read the newspapers, the daily newspapers, the letter columns, and editorials, well, I've seen it's replete with letters scrutinizing the distinguished former member of the diplomatic community, a la Guyana.
Former? Because she left the country today on a diplomatic mission. You said former.
You know that she left the country?
Yes, sir.
Oh, where's she gone?
Not my business. I'm just telling you what we know.
But you must know where she's gone. If you know she's left the country, you must know where she's gone.
Chief, is she still in the diplomatic service?
I am saying to you that the scrutiny of Mrs. Harper has already begun. You have the critics, the cynics, and the pessimists. When Mrs. Harper appeared on Mr. Ruel Johnson's list, nobody said anything.
Who is Ruel Johnson?
Who is he?
There's no Ruel Johnson.
We don't know.
What's his name?
Opposition associates.
I don't know him. You know him?
Johnson letter writer, prominent letter writer.
No, he doesn't.
When Mrs. Harper appeared on Mr. Ruel Johnson's letter,
You don't know him.
well, I'm saying to you,
Are you giving him prominence?
I am saying to you, I'm not giving him prominence. You all have already given him prominence. But I'm saying to you, when he published a letter in which he placed Mrs. Harper as a foreign minister in a new government, no one had anything to say. No one had anything to say. But so she's good for the opposition.
He
But when
pushes
she
the
comes on
opposition.
our list, she's bad for the government.
All right, we didn't know that.
Mr. Gordon Mosley, Cap News Source.
It's interesting to hear
Mr. Rohey, sir, could you say whether or not Mrs. Harper has tendered her resignation as Director General of Foreign Affairs? And could you also say when this offer was first made to her?
My information is that she's already done so.
Done what? Resign?
But I'm answering your question.
He said she already resigned.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what?
And sir, could you say when was the offer first made to Miss Harper?
I cannot offer you a specific date, but during the period when I was being asked questions here from time to time, where is our Prime Ministerial candidate? When our Prime Ministerial candidate is going to be announced? During all that period.